Felix Mestas, welcome to the Facade Focus Podcast. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, man. I appreciate it. It's great to chat with you.
Yeah, looking forward to it. So I've done a bit of an introduction for you off camera. That's all ready to roll, so the guests will know a little bit about what we're going to talk about here, but I couldn't introduce you any better than you'd be able to do yourself. So I'm going to hand it over to you. Tell us who you are, what you're doing, and what's got you here.
Sounds good. So, my name is Felix. I'm the Vice President of Operations at California Sheet Metal. I'm coming up, gosh, in a couple months here, it'll be a year that I joined the firm. Obviously started my career in glass and glazing, 20 plus years ago, but found a home here a little while back. And yeah, I spent a lot of time on the glass and glazing envelope side. So finding this kind of opportunity at California Sheet Metals, definitely a new experience for me being on this side. But
Yeah,
the essence of it is essentially being on the enclosure of projects, and then from my seat as the VP of Ops, I really get to see kind of the stem to stern from once we sell a project, getting it into engineering, design, drawings, fabrication, procurement, and then finally installing it, and then all of the sort of customer interface that goes with that, and people development, people coaching, and those kind of things that we love.
excellent. I love it. And before that, you were obviously at JR Butler over in Denver for quite a while. What did you do over there, and where do you kind of come from in the industry?
Yeah, so I started in the field at JR Butler, gosh, 2003 or 2004, and was an installer for a number of years. Started running work, so I really wore almost every hat at JR
Yeah,
Butler, really except the accounting side. But you went from running jobs to general superintendent to director of operations, and then finally the vice president of operations. We had sort of a cohort of VPs from sales and estimating, as well as like support, accounting,
yeah,
that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, I mean, I really did it all there. Saw a lot of stuff from the industry side, and then helped Butler, grow from kind of being based regionally in Denver to Texas, Tennessee. Obviously, Texas itself is several massive markets, so
yeah.
covered a lot of that. And yeah, it was a good experience there. A lot of really good people, and did some good
Right.
stuff there.
Excellent. And Conley and the Raze Robotics guys pretty well as well with your position with them. Give us a bit of a flavor as to what you're doing with them. And I'd never really thought of it like this, but you in that position, you're kind of firsthand. You must have seen and dealt with a lot of the problems that they're solving on site. So it's quite close to your heart, I can imagine.
That's actually a big reason why I engage with those guys, is because of the problems, and we'll definitely get into that more, because I complain about this to anybody that listens. But yeah, I was really we had a lot of boots on the ground in tons of markets, and we were struggling with the same problems all across them, right? Layout and predecessor work, and at Butler, those guys really believe in taking the helm as far as responsibility, and so that meant a lot to me
Yeah,
to not just push back on the GC and say, hey, this is not good. We had to provide a solution to help us get it done. And so through some problem solving efforts, we sort of arrived at layout and predecessor work. Obviously, doing big sort of concrete structures like that, that's a huge deal. And
yeah,
so I reached out to several robotics companies. It seemed like such a moonshot to me at the time. This was, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago now,
yeah, yeah.
maybe a little bit longer. But
Wow.
they were the only ones that reached back out. I didn't know the size of the company. I didn't really know. I just knew that they were in robotics, and we had to do something different than what we were doing. And
Yeah,
so Conley got back with me, and we started using them to do layout and then place embeds. And a big pitch that they had was they wanted to get employees off of the leading edges. And I
mm,
really like that alignment with safety. That's a big thing. And then, nobody wants to talk about that, but the profit side of it, which is, you have less, folks out there doing the work, and less things that could go wrong, and,
yeah,
less kids sick and less babysitter issues and whatever. And so it was a pretty good sell. Their layout was remarkable. And then I just really loved their sort of core mission of wanting to, break free from the way that we do things. There's a handful of innovators out there in our industry that they're not sort of, just retreading the same ideas. they're
Mm.
fresh and they want to change stuff. And then so that evolved. We used them quite a bit. And then when I left JR Butler, they reached out to me and asked if I would join their advisory board.
Great.
Um, and so I jumped at the opportunity. And so we chat about once a month, and they'll bring certain issues. And obviously I wear an operations hat, so helping them look at contracts and sort of using my kind of seat in a company to steer them towards values that I would find with the products and services, and then just sort of trading good advice back and forth. Um,
Absolutely.
amazing guys.
Yeah, I love it. And that kind of sets us up nicely for the problems and the issues that we're going to talk about in the industry. And we obviously touched on it very, very briefly off camera, but talk to me about a problem that you see in the industry that you think we need to solve.
Well, that's a long podcast to hit
Gonna
them all,
say
but there's a
choose
handful
one.
which are yeah, which
Choose
are
one of
pretty
them.
interesting. Something that I think I've always struggled with, and this has kind of been universal, is that I really think fundamentally there's a misalignment of incentives, and I don't think that this is and I'm going to tie a couple points here together, but
Yeah.
I think one big thing is that we are effectively incentivized as subcontractors to reduce cost. And by reducing cost, that means you're pulling people out. You're trying to find the waste, and you're trying to excise that from the process. I
Yeah.
think the general contractor community is they're incentivized by adding cost, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that's just a
Mm.
model, right? They get paid a percentage of the cost, and so I think that might sound like a bit of a nuance, but I
Mm.
really think that that's diametrically opposed to one another. And so
Mm.
where that shows up, Tom, is I think it's largely in how problems present and what the solutions are. So if you sort of scale this back and you look at construction as a whole, as a driver of GDP, I think we are running in the opposite direction of every other major GDP driving industry. Healthcare, manufacturing, robotics, I mean, all of those things. Think of automakers. If you took, and I've done this exercise in ChatGPT, it's pretty fun, but if you
Yeah.
take the metrics that you would measure efficiency growth on any other industry, like auto manufacturers is the best example, like
Yep.
Toyota. If you applied the construction growth or lack of growth metrics from the 50s, 60s to Toyota, a Corolla would cost $180,000. It would be an 18-week wait to get it. And as soon
Mm.
as you got it, every month for the first year, you'd have to take it back for recalls.
Yeah.
That's like the state of our industry. And I think that a lot of that is rooted in the way that we tackle problems. Because I'll give you like a little bit of a bunny trail to this story here, but several years ago, I read a ton. I stick to
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know personal development, economics, really like boring kind of work stuff. But I took a break for a little bit, was reading some stuff about ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
And so it was funny because at the time, like my daughters were pretty young, and it just so happened there was an exhibit at the museum for uh, this like life in the Nile Delta, this Egyptian thing. So I'm like, oh, let's go check it out. So we're
Yeah.
there and we're walking around, and you see like the farming and how people sort of grow food. But then there was this project that these people were doing in ancient Egypt 3,500 years ago, and they're building a small bridge, and there's these clay tablets, and they're just outlining, what life is like, and they displayed them to show you what these people dealt with. And it was funny because you're
Mm.
looking at these clay tablets, and it's like there's no skilled labor in the area, and there's they had copper shortages and all these different things. 1,000-year-old tablet, and you look at that tablet, and you look at your cell phone and your email, and it's like these are the same things. My inbox is filled with shortages of material, and we don't have the right workmen, and there's quality issues, and it's like what the heck is changing? Like why is
Mm.
nothing getting better in our world, right? Everything else is running in the right direction, but construction isn't. I think that's a huge problem, and I think that a lot of that lies in the way that we approach it, right? The incentives
Mm.
of what drives us. So as contractors, subcontractors, we want to remove waste. We want to remove things that are in our way. And a lot of times, and I speak this with all the love in the world towards the GC community, but
Yeah.
it's almost the opposite to solve the problem, right? It's more manpower, it's more equipment, it's more. And
Mm.
for us as subcontractors, that's cost.
Yeah.
And then so in order to continue this cycle, we kick the can down the road. We promise to offset the loss on one job with another, and we'll, wink and sign the paper. We'll get you on the next one. And
Mm.
who ultimately suffers for that, right? That's the owner. They get a product that's later than they thought. It's of
Mm.
worse quality than they thought. And so what that breeds is this strong distrust. in the sub community. So again, to take our process and analog it to something else, it's like you have, uh, I mean, imagine anywhere else you would go and do the same thing, right? Like you don't go to the grocery store and bring like your beef consultant or your pasta inspector, right? But our industry forces us to do that because people don't trust how we're going to spend their dollars and how those dollars are going to actually build them something, right?
It's so interesting. Well, I had a quote from someone a few years ago now. We were talking about, I'm just kind of dialing in on your cost versus basically GCs making money on something. And we were talking about how to hire younger people. And, they put it a lot better than I'm going to put it, but they said, we hire a young project coordinator to go out and, track projects, walk around the site and just be our kind of not glorified admin person, but someone that's just going to go on and look at like, where are we losing time? Where are we doing all this sort of stuff? And they're like, for a GC, they put someone like that on the project, that's billable hours. For a
Yeah,
subcontractor, that's just straight cost.
straight
So
cost.
it's just like a completely different mindset. And how, I mean, I can tell how passionate you are about it, and you clearly take this outside of work and have a true interest in it, not just, helps me improve my job, but, I can hear the passion in your voice. What are the basic steps that need to happen? Because we can't revolutionize the industry overnight, impossible. But where are where's the low hanging fruit to get
Yeah.
even started with this sort of stuff?
So I think there's several different ways that we can start moving in the right direction with it. It's tough because it takes so many people, and you see, how hard it is to be awarded a project.
Mm,
And so it's not like you can just sort of take this hardline stance. You have to be competitive, especially right now. I mean, with as many people are bidding on the same amount of work in slower markets, it's tough.
mm,
But I think as a subcontractor, one big thing, and this is something I've learned in my experience under some sort of great mentorship at J.R. Butler, and certainly bringing to any here, California Sheet Metal, and any place else, is that I think as subcontractors, we are so used to shedding risk, and we
mm,
need to, instead of shed risk as much, there's obviously a measure of, care that you need to take with it, but we have to take more responsibility for what we touch, what we own, how we interface. That we present ourselves to the owner group as experts, right? We have to be
mm.
experts. We have to own more, and I think that's like leading the way by owning the design, and getting in with the owners, architects, developers early. Developing testing systems. Something big we're working on here at California Sheet Metal is getting our own systems onboarded and tested, and so that we can control all of the variables, right? We're not relying on some retread set of drawings that says by others, by others, by others, by others. It's like, this is our system, our product, we're going to own it. And
Mm.
we, rely on our expertise. Something that's interesting at California Sheet Metal specifically is that we are a 117-year-old company. I mean, that's older than penicillin, which is
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, yeah.
And so when you talk about expertise, like when, we have a designer who can say, yeah, we can do that, or no, we can't do that. Like that's pretty solid, right?
Yeah.
And so getting those opportunities to own more of it, I think is going to help those kind of things, because we have to, it's one thing to talk it, but we also have to show our GCs and our owners that you give us more work, we're going to do better with it, right? We're going to have better
Mm.
results. We're going to take care of it in the long run. You're not going to have all these, warranty calls and these leaks and whatever. We're going to take ownership of it, take responsibility of it, but that requires a lot of trust. Something that really
Yeah.
caught me off guard was the closeness in the contractor community here in San Diego
Mm.
versus Denver. And nothing against Denver. I grew up there. I love it. But I was really surprised that for as big of a market as it is here, the contractor community is insanely close. I mean, there's an event
Mm.
almost every week. So I think it's really a ripe environment to be able to partner up with the GC, start owning more of those things, and then help them. They can help take you to market as a subcontractor as a really good option. And then cost starts to drop down, right? If they know they're getting a really strong value, and they know that they're getting a lot of quality and a lot of service, that's a big deal.
That
So I think it takes a lot of partnership, but
that's huge. I spoke to someone at DPR Construction a few weeks ago, and it's interesting you said that the comparison between California and I say California, San Diego specifically, versus Denver, and a question came about. I basically asked him, what does a good trade contractor look like? And I posted about it last week. And I think some of that has to come from the subcontractor. Like, we're prepared to do this. We'll come in early. We'll help you with that upfront stuff. But it also has to come from the GC. They have to be willing to come to the table and do that and partner. Because yes, I totally agree. I think that our industry could do a much better job of approaching business as partnerships rather than transactions. And
Right.
just going out to bid. We need a project, rather than kind of taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture. Noted that is harder in down markets because some people just do need a project to keep the lights on, and then it
Yeah.
becomes like a question of you need to feed, you need to put food on the table. But it's interesting when you look at San Diego and Denver, and you've maybe got and I don't want to, like you said, I don't want to paint both cities with the same brush, but with a contracting community that's so close in San Diego, they're obviously going to be open to that collaboration, and then conversations will, you'll break down those barriers a lot sooner than you will maybe if you're sat in a market like Denver or another market that maybe isn't as tight knit, and it might take you 3 years and X amount of at bats to break down the walls, to gain the trust, to keep going and keep going. So, yeah, I don't know whether it probably needs to be a combination of both, but we need to get better, and I think the GCs need to be prepared to come to the table and accept the help as well.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of conversations to be had about, several years ago there was the IPD process, right? The
Mm.
integrated project delivery that was sort of kicked around a ton, and but I do think that there are opportunities in that partnership to incentivize differently. There was it's kind of interesting, right? The way that our progress billing and some of the financial cycles that we're in, it makes it really tough to even venture out of the norm because
Mm.
you're having to expend dollars. You're not going to get paid on them, for months and months and months. And then there's like the billings game, and then there's the retention game, and there's so many different layers to um, that. And then we get really good in our careers at playing the games, right? But at the end of the day, we're not really delivering more value for the owners. We're not, sort of running those big efficiency metrics in the right direction. And so, something I was really impressed with and surprised here is um, the use of AI to automate certain processes, and that's been pretty incredible here at California Sheet Metal. It's an interesting like sort of arc. We're definitely an older company, but there's
Mm.
like sort of a new cutting edge of employee here, and a lot of these guys didn't grow up, and hate to sound like the old guy, especially when it feels like I was just the young guy, but
Yeah.
um, the cohort now is they're very savvy with that. So I think that itself is going to help
Yeah.
quite a bit. And I don't mean to sort of just generalize, oh, AI is going to, do all these crazy things, but there's definitely a lot of things that we've done in the past that we won't have to do anymore. We can do better because we can automate it, and we can use sort of the power of, AI to help create new processes, to streamline processes. I mean, if you think about just searching through specs, right? It
Uh,
just going through those,
yeah.
if you can, and we've developed some cool ways to do stuff like that here. How much time does that save, right? So then the idea is that, if you're thinking like from a lean perspective, how much waste you're pulling out of the process, what does that do? It just opens up more opportunities for you to improve the actual work, right? To go
Oh,
do things that are going to add value and not chase
it's
bureaucracy.
exponential. Yeah. I had so a couple of really close clients that I've got I work really closely with. We were talking about this in just after the summer last year, 2025. And, I was trying to, I say trying, educating, probably not the best word either, really. I was discussing with them just about the very basic tasks that they could even use with such a simple thing like ChatGPT. And, I'm not, building apps with it or, creating platforms, but just the way I pitched it to them was you're just buying hours back. And if you're
Yeah.
selling, let's say you're selling $80 million worth of work and you've got X amount of employee hours that go into selling $80 million worth of work. Well, if I can get you back, I don't know, and let's say 2 hours a week, that's moderate, but if I get you 2 hours back a week on every single employee, and you've got X amount of employees, forget how much you're saving in terms of time. How much more time are you spending on the good stuff about going out and actually winning projects? That's the opportunity cost, not
That's
because
right.
I can save you 2 hours per person so they can go and have a longer coffee break. That's wiped. They're now doing more of the stuff that generates the value that maybe it takes you to be more efficient. Maybe it takes you to be able to get, even if you, like in our industry, even if you get one more project a year, that could be $15 million.
Huge
Like
difference. Absolutely.
for just such a small output, is in saving a couple of hours per person, it could result in absolutely
Yeah.
exponential returns.
It's an exciting time for some of the stuff we're doing, some of the people. I mean, I'm sure you know Guthrie AI and Ted Baumgartner and some of the stuff that
Ooh,
that guy's in. I mean, he reminds me a lot of the Conleys and those guys that are like they
yeah,
come in, they're fresh, and I think I'm guilty of this, and I remember certainly being on the arc of a new guy in construction or a new guy in the office or whatever. You start asking these like,
yeah,
hey, why do we do it this way questions, and you're just sort of pulled back down. It's like, well, that's how we do it, right? Um, and it's nice to see a new cohort of guys come in and say, well, why do we do it that way? It's like, okay, you're a subcontractor. That means you need to have estimators and you need to have blah 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 blah. And it's
yeah,
nice that somebody's saying like, hey, why do we have to do that each and every time? Why not streamline that? And then those guys, like you said, they're actually force multiplying. They're not
yeah,
out there, they're not losing their effort. And it's interesting because, in my background, I had the really distinct honor of working with the University of Kentucky in their lean program for years when I was with Jared Butler. And
yeah,
those guys are passionate about lean, radical about it. I mean, really, I've never seen anybody as a group as into it as those guys are, and they really live it. But what I love about it is that there's really this mindset around the lean concepts versus the lean tools. And for a while it was that where you have like you're introducing lean and employees think like, well, you're just doing this to cut jobs. It's like we're doing this so that we can grow the company further. We can add more space for valuable things so that you can grow in your career, not, we want to take away some of the dangerous or the silly or the rote or the monotonous tasks so that you can go do other things in your career. And that's kind of a light bulb moment. AI reminds me a lot of that, and it gets so general. And then there's
yeah,
always the fringes of the curve, right? Like there's a pretty fat-tailed set of distributions on like the either side of it of people who are just lean is just tools. Same thing with AI. It's like, oh, it's just super Google. It's like it's really not. There's a sweet spot where it's hyper effective, and some guys are good at tapping into it, others aren't. And the guys who are going to be the ones I think in the surviving downturns like this, right? Because
yeah,
here's the dangerous side of what we're doing now is in times like this, you have stud framers who are like, oh, I can pick up some general sheet metal. Oh, I can pick up whatever. And they start doing things they're not good at. And, to be honest, they don't do it well. And then as far as the owner's concerned, they're like, all sheet metal guys are terrible. All, you might have a panel guy who picks up glass and,
yeah,
he has a leaky building or whatever. And the owner's going to say that it just drives in more distrust of the
yeah.
sub community. And that's what's scary about times like this. So we have to embrace the things like AI and the partnership piece to be able to, to better ourselves and provide more trust.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm glad you shout out Ted Baumgartner as well because he is outstanding.
He's a cool guy, man.
Yeah, and it takes someone like him that isn't afraid to question and just look at things for what they are rather than we kind of do this because it would just be uh, more of a hassle to change. Like it kind of works and we kind of can do
Yeah.
it. And it's worked before, so just leave it. Don't try and fix something that's not broken. But when you dig a little bit deeper, it is. And I've kind of looked into a little bit about what Ted does, how he does it, and looked at some of his work, and yeah, it's outstanding. And I think more more of the small to mid-sized glazers can really benefit from, and the
Yeah.
metal companies could really benefit from leaning into that sort of process on the estimating and pre-construction side. But going back to the AI stuff again, I think it was Max Perlstein that we spoke about it last year, and not AI specifically, but the general mindset of the industry just being that's just the way we've always done it, not just with
Yeah.
AI, just with a lot of things. And I think
Everything.
that's very contagious in we've always done it that way. That's the way we're going to do it. Even down to when you don't win a bid. The guy I was talking to from the GC last month. You don't win a bid, you don't set up any feedback, you never get feedback, you just jump straight back on the horse again and go again. Let's go again. We didn't win
Right.
it. Well, we need to bid another project. Yeah, we'll just take a step back. Let's ask some questions. Even if we don't get an answer this time, if we keep asking the question, eventually they're going to come back to us on, bid 3, 4, 5, whenever it is. And they're going to not get tired of us asking, but they're going to say, "Oh, these guys really want an answer now. Like, why do they want an answer?"
That's
Just
right.
positioning yourself, think differently, do something differently. Um, but it's interesting to hear you talk about the almost conflict of how a GC is kind of working their way through the project versus how the subcontractor is working their way through the project.
Well, I think there's a lot to be said about what the incentive piece, and I'm a big economics student, and it's funny, like Thomas Sowell, Milton Friedman, it's like incentives are the root of it, right? What drives us, and that, again, I think that really shows up in how we approach problems. And for at least the 23 years of my career, that's really what it's been. Is one sort of has uh, a diametrically opposed attitude to what the job needs and what the project needs. One is more and one is less. And until those are congruent with one another, I don't think you'll ever really be happy with one another. I don't think will ever sort of break through that curve. Something that was interesting in my lean training. So lean in its philosophies, I've had a couple of amazing lean mentors over the years.
Mm,
Rich Allo and Ed Welch, and these guys are just, I mean, such a wealth of knowledge, but they build up this like what they call Garoku, which is basically like the guiding philosophy, the wisdom around decisions. So if you're in new, uncharted territory, you have questions, you sort of revisit the philosophy around these things. There's books, there's, lectures, and these kind of get shared around. I've been pretty fortunate to be part of some of that, but I can't remember if it was in a book or if it was a lecture. But
mm,
Fujio Cho, one of the chairman of Toyota North America, was giving this lecture years ago, and I read it, and it was basically about Eastern versus Western philosophy. And
mm,
it was so interesting to talk about because Toyota even struggled with it. There's a book called The Power of Habit that talks about that, coming to America and getting Americans to use standard work, right? And so in Japan, at least what the Toyota guys told us, they don't really have these binders of standards and processes. It's kind of this hive mind. They're used to doing things in this process, and they problem solve for it when it's out of the process. And what I thought was fascinating about it is they made this analogy, basically saying that the Japanese were forced because of, literally they're an island. They don't have tons and tons of resources. Everything has to come from outside if they can get it. So you have to focus on improving what you have, reusing, reducing the waste. Whereas Americans, we have this really expansionist attitude. It's sort of ingrained in us since we were kids, right? Manifest destiny, unlimited resources, unlimited land, more, 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 the American dream, that sort of stuff. And those are very incongruent with one another, right? One says there's always more manpower, more whatever, right? More things. And the Japanese side of it is let's focus on less. And what I loved about that is I've used that sort of concept way more in developing and changing processes successfully than any tool, any lean, Kaizen, what like to me it's like I have books and books and books on lean all over, and it all comes down to that, right? It's just reducing some of that effort, right? We used to talk about the pie chart of what
yeah,
guys do in the day, right? It's like 85% of their day is wasted effort. The 15% is the actual work. And from the GC community, they want to shove more into that 15%, right? At, late, add a overtime, add more guys,
yeah.
get more equipment. I don't mean to pick on those guys that much, but as a sub, it's
No,
like the
no,
bane of
no.
my existence. But
Yeah,
then, the reality is the Toyota guys would say, well, what are you doing with the 85? Why don't you just reduce some of the wasted effort, and then the value added work just sort of grows, right? If you can eliminate
yeah. If you take
5%
it
of the
out of
wasted
that
effort, yeah,
bucket,
it's
it goes
huge.
directly into that one, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's hard to sell that to the community when you're on a job and you're late to say, hey, I want to do less. I don't want to add guys. Like you're going to say to get out of the room, right? You're going to get kicked out of the office. But that's the reality is as subs, that's what we have to live with is I can't add cost that comes directly out of my bottom line. And, there's, I don't, I've, been a handful of places, um, and you see the bottom line, there's not that much, right? There's not that much to go around.
No,
So you can't waste it by adding guys just to make somebody feel happy, you
happy.
know?
Yeah. Where's
Yeah.
the balance between like that pure IPD stuff and where we are now?
I think that's tough. I mean, it's easier to talk about that in an up market, right? When there's lots of opportunities and there's not enough subs to go around, and People are growing at a crazy rate and adding all kinds of staff. Like that's when those ideas tend to get floated. But I mean, the market is surprised me, post election, not to get political, but I was really, you get a Republican in office, you expect,
Here we
the
go.
construction market to do certain things. And, starting right at, what was it, March, April with tariffs, it was like, oh boy. So I think that everybody's just sort of holding their breath.
Mm.
Um, and, we're seeing the interest rate drop, but it's not quite cutting loose this flood of work. But it says a lot, I think, about our industry that we have to wait until it's that fat and there's that much work going on to be able to try things that will only benefit the people who are building. It's almost like this investment where if we did this now, well, it's tough if we sort of, took another fresh look at IPD for lack of a better term, something like that,
Mm.
or, partnering up or sort of doing maybe like a hub and spoke type structure with the GCs and the subcontractors, a different pay incentive, whatever those things are. Um, it would help us during downtimes, right? Because there'd be more work to go
It,
around
it
because
it
costs wouldn't
would.
be so high.
It would.
Yeah.
Do you know what my only concern with that is that in the and again, just because this is the way it's always been done and the mentality I imagine people have, I think in such a cyclical industry like construction, when it's in the good times, so we're sat now in, not bad times, but maybe a flatter market than we're used to over the past decade and a half for sure. When people are in the good times, they jump on that gravy train and they almost have the mentality of, we need to make hay now because the bad times will come. So, forget that, like, how do we optimize and make it efficient? Let's get some dollars in the bank and
Yeah.
let's build this because there's going to be a day where the gravy train stops. So again, it's that mentality thing of, we were probably just getting into just pure capitalism chat now, but like where is that, like, I don't know. I'm trying to put myself in their
Yeah.
shoes. Like, market's good, easy to sell work. Not you can kind of throw your number in there, but you know you're going to get enough work. Then what incentive do you have to then reduce and again, I imagine now I'm hearing myself say it out loud. It comes down to that um, the incentive over decades rather than months and years,
Yeah.
and seeing it as a long term play. But then when you've got the employees that maybe don't have any ownership in the business and they're looking at this as, I'm here until I'm kind of not, then
Yeah.
my results that I generate for this company within my tenure here are going to reflect on me. So I've got to make sure it's good. So maybe I'm not incentivized to make it better because I want the accolades and the
Sure.
um, so it's such a
The
conundrum.
capitalism's an interesting piece because I am a diehard capitalist, and it's funny because there's a few. I would challenge almost anybody that you see, especially the sort of doomerism that's on social media,
Mm,
says one thing, but it's like almost every example of poor capitalism is actually not capitalism, right? It's cronyism, it's corporatism, it's all these
mm,
different things. And the funny thing is that competition is what really breeds that, right?
yeah.
Competition gets us better, faster, cheaper. We have to be better than the next guy. But I will say this, there's a lot of resistance to that, despite what people might say, because competition sucks. You have to be on your game. It's like Super Bowl winning team. Like you're not taking Saturdays off, right? You're not kind of resting. It's every day's got to be and that's a hard way to live. But there's I won't bore anybody with statistics or data, but it's like
Guys,
you look
but statistics and data won't bore anyone. I promise you. You
you
go
look
for
at
it.
like the markets that or the products that are, and I'll pick on the government side of it, but you look at those products that are less affected by government regulation over
Mm,
time. TVs, right? A 90-inch TV is $600. Like 2 years
yeah,
ago it was $1,000. 10 years ago it was $5,000, right? You couldn't.
yeah.
Those things that are left to the market tend to run that way because they have to compete. That's just common sense, right? I was pretty fortunate several years back to go to Cuba with some of the guys from Butler,
Cool.
and super cool experience, amazing. And it was funny because this is like two or three generations that have lived under, you know, communism,
Mm,
and they're willing to trade services and goods with you. So my takeaway is that free market or black market, there will be a market. It's like human nature to want to do that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so our industry is funny because you start asking yourself, well, if we're left to compete, which we feel like we are, I'm competing with other subcontractors to take scope, then how come
yep,
it's not fair? I'm a better contractor, right? We have the best trained guys in the world. We have the best facility, like all those things. Cool. Why do I not win this? It's because it's not really a true free market, right? There's a lot of, gamesmanship at play. There's a lot of, and I'm not picking on the GC's owners, whatever. It's like, but there are certain reasons, like, hey, I'm gonna put this job out, but this is kind of my guy. Or you have a sub who can afford to, cut their throat and buy the job. It's really not true competition. If it was, there'd be a handful of companies, and we would have only really good products.
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I
hundred
I
percent.
truly believe that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and when you look at it, yeah, as true competition, I suppose over the long run, you'd hope that people that are undercutting are really buying jobs and really trying to kind of cut their number to stupid levels just to win work is almost like you're taking performance enhancing drugs in the 100 meters. It's
Yeah,
not
for
going to end
sure.
well. It's you might win the race, but it
Yeah,
gets you through to the next round. But then what happens next? Then what happens next? Then what happens next? So you'd hope if you zoomed out enough that the good guys would kind of end up winning. You'd hope,
yeah.
but yeah, you're right. I hear stories all the time of the GCs go out and um, they've earmarked a particular subcontractor for that job, so it's not fair. It's not the
Yeah.
best. The best wins on the day.
Or a subcontractor who, you tend to look at the sort of the low guy, the low rent guy, the kind of whatever. It's like, oh, that guy's going to cut. It's like sometimes it's a big company and a company with a huge balance sheet, a publicly traded company, right? Across the entire country who can take a job from you like that. To them, it's not a big deal. It's, adding a little bit of backlog because the overhead nut's already covered. You don't typically think it's those guys. But that happens quite a bit. And so, then there's also the conversation about, how many different sort of entities exist between somebody who's buying something and somebody who makes
Mm.
something, right? In
Yeah.
any other industry you go to, you're buying your truck from General Motors, you're buying your groceries from Kroger,
Yep.
but in our industry, you have contractors, consultants, you name it. There's so many people between us and an owner, we're not even allowed to talk to them, and so it's hard to really truly distinguish yourself from a competitive standpoint.
Where do you sit on the consultants? Their not necessarily their value in the process, but kind of where how they're brought into the process. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I generally grew up strongly disliking the idea of consultants. And I had, on the envelope side, as a glass and glazing guy, you would get these guys sort of plopped in. They would be in
Yep.
your meetings and they would go through your details and say, you need more, you need double flashing and you need, 3 lines of sealant and you need this, and this, because you don't want it to leak, right? And
Yep.
so it's sort of a lose-lose question because you're like, well, I can't really answer that without incriminating myself. But in the back of your mind, I'm like, I didn't carry any money to add all that. I don't certainly can't afford to triple glaze this building when it's not actually what it needs. So that puts a bad taste in your mouth
Mm.
pretty early on for me. I will say this though, we worked with some people that, um, I've worked with them over the past that would be considered a consultant. That was, I mean, you got $10 for every dollar you spent. There's a guy named Rich Davini. He wrote a book called The Attributes. He was the leader for the SEAL Team Six training and selection, the development group. I mean, and he wrote this book, which just sort of blew everybody's mind from a people perspective on the difference between skills and attributes and how to screen for attributes in your people and put them in places where those shine. And we brought him in on a limited basis to help consult for developing our role definitions and things like that. And I mean that changed the game as far as like putting people in the right spot. So it might be a big upfront cost to see it on paper, but I mean you're moving people in the right role. You're like growing these incredible people. You're saving hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on having the right people in the right spots. I think those ones are very good. But I think like any and all, you have to know what problem you're trying to solve, right? You have to
Mm.
bringing somebody in because they're a consultant which a lot of people in our industry do because you just
Mm.
have to have the consultant, I think that's where the value is wasted. And then, at the end of the day, it's just another bloated line that the owner has to look at. But there's some really, really, really good folks out there that, um, and like I think I had a good 6 month stint where I was kind of, poking around at the consulting side
Yeah.
and just offering up help for some friends in the industry and doing consulting. And it's interesting to be on that side of the coin because you're like, well, I don't want to be seen as like this, parasite just kind of trying to glom onto what you guys are doing. I have actual techniques and skills I can offer you guys to help. Um, but I think like a lot of things as owners in companies, we have to ask what problem we want to solve with the consultant before you bring one in. That's
Yeah.
I think the key.
And do you think the consultant is there not due to incompetency in totality, but is it there almost as just like a safety net? Maybe companies that you work with really just a consultant on those projects was just totally irrelevant, just wasn't needed. It was
I
just
think that's an interesting question because I think like the one argument for the consultant on the ownership side would be, well, I don't know buildings, right? I'm just a developer. I came from, the M&A world or whatever. I'm putting some money together. I want to build something. I don't know
Mm,
buildings. And so you're like, okay, yeah, you need an envelope guy, you need an HVAC guy, you need a blah blah blah. Well, I would argue to put this in maybe more simplistic terms, like I don't know how to build a car. I could
mm,
change my tire. I can on a new car, I don't know what I could do. There's so many computers and stuff like that, but I have no qualms in going and, spending $100,000 on a truck at Ford or whatever, without bringing somebody with me to. And the reason I feel that is because their results are fucking great, right?
mm.
They make a
Yeah,
good product. It performs. It's tested. It's like I don't need to have all of that.
yeah,
So I don't need to be an expert in automobiles to go buy a car or almost anything else, right? Like, even to call a home inspector a consultant. Um, I mean, what, 2 hours and the guy's like, oh, your toilet's flush and the sewer looks clear. Like, you
good to
know,
go.
you don't need that because the results are have been so consistent and so good.
Yeah,
So I think it says a lot about our industry that we have to have so many people stuffed in there, lending consultants and owners reps and envelope consultants, HVAC consultants, and not knocking the world. There's a lot of I met some really really good ones over the years. Some of
yeah,
the guys at like CDC and spots like they're amazing guys,
yeah.
but and they really know their shit and they care about giving a good product.
Mm,
So not to take away from any of that, but if we had as an industry and as a subcontractor tier, a niche, if we had stellar world-class results every single time, you wouldn't need it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally agree. You'll like this one. I had a conversation with a really interesting character last year, and he's head of a design engineering firm they're multidisciplinary, but he doesn't like to call them multidisciplinary because he's building a team that is interdisciplinary. So very much, used to work with companies like your Arups, your Thornton Tomasettis, these types of companies, and who's been brought on by a European project management firm. And he's building what he's called this interdisciplinary team. And the way that he looked at it was, if you could go to build a building and you've got I don't know, the architect draws this building and the aesthetic is this, and because they want to keep design intent from this is what we're trying to do with it. Like, okay, cool. But the way that they designed the building may not be functional for one of three other trades, but they're the one that has designed the building. So we're talking architecture language now. Then you look at the engineers and you're talking about, okay, well, the way that you've designed the building takes the sunlight in like this, and you want it to be sustainable. Well, it can't be like that because if the sun is coming in like this, building heats up, HVAC is on, the AC is on all day long. So actually, from a livable and usable building, this does not work purely from an architectural design at the very front end, just because it's been talked about in an architecture language, not necessarily engineering or facilities management, or when this building's been handed over, how does this building now run? Like, and that's just purely because the architect's looking at this specific thing.
Yeah.
So he's building a team where he's getting like young, let's say they're engineers to start with, and he's putting them through like an engineering training and real life world engineering for 2 years. Then they'll do design for 2 years. Then they might look at MEP for 2 years. Then they might go into like the facilities management side of it. So that when they're brought in by the owner, the idea is that they're brought in by the owner right at the start before anything's done, and they run it all the way through. And the building is designed and executed based on how that building is handed over to the facilities manager at the end. They start with the end in mind. So, his thing that he kept saying was, if you were to build a boat and you had a guy that was doing the sail, a guy that was doing the hull, a guy that was doing the anchor, the guy doing the sail had built this huge, big sail that, or whatever, it could be small, could be big. But the point is that the guy building the main boat may have a completely different idea to what sail is going to work with that boat. And then the thing doesn't even float.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah,
so
that's such a clever idea.
It's just looking at it differently and everyone on the building speaking the same language. Because some people are looking at it from one perspective, and not because they're incompetent or bad or they can't do their job. That's their education. That's the way they've been taught in the workplace. They're a product of their environment at work. That's the way, again, like we talked about, the way it's always been done. So it's not that they're intrinsically bad. It's just we're all coming to a project and talking all these different languages to build one thing at the end.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's amazing. It's cool to see people do that on that scale, right? And commit to that. One thing I love to kind of shout out to the Butler guys and the design team there is they would ask up front, and it was relatively uncommon at the time. I don't know if it's better now, but they would ask the design team, like, what are your goals? What do you guys want out of this? Like, do you want it to look like your face? Do you want it to, like, just give us what you want out of it? And it's funny because it almost never yielded the answer you'd expect. It was always something sort of, oblique to the whole conversation. You're like, oh, that's cool. But then now you have like this kind of thing to work towards. And I love that. It's funny because like I get definitely down on the industry a little bit, with certain things, but it's pretty refreshing to see that there's, like the guys we talked about, Ted and Conley and, guys like you're talking about who are out there kind of like, let's just do it a little different each time. And that's, I think, the optimist side of me that loves seeing it. That keeps you re-engaged and wanting to, keep doing it.
Yeah. We just got to get those people in front of as many people as possible and just open people's mind to it. I think that's the key to it. That's like the first step. They're just saying there is a different way. You don't have to change overnight. This is going to be a process, but just take that first step. Try something. And just keep your mind open to it. So no, I love that. Before we go into the quick fire questions, anything else you want to share? Anything else you want to kind of touch upon that you think is important?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, and this is like I'm going to pitch the California sheet metal way here, is that like I think as subs, sometimes I rattle on about this on LinkedIn because I get frustrated, but we have to do a better job, I think, of number one, getting some elbow room out there. I rail on this all the time, but like marking up contracts and pushing back a little bit, like, what are the odds that your agreement lines up so cleanly with a 200-page document somebody on some, fifth floor lawyer put together? It's not, but we sign up to it because we're so hungry for the job that we do all of our sub community like a disservice. And then the risk versus responsibility thing. I think that's the biggest thing is as subs, we have to own more of what we're doing. We have to, and you price it, right, accordingly. You don't have to do it for free, but you do have to do it and own a little bit more, go a little bit deeper with your design, go a little bit more. And I think that's a strong value here at CSM, is that when you engage with us, it's, we might not always be the cheapest. That's not necessarily the conversation, but we will be the best at what we do. And I think that if more subs took that approach, I think we'd be in a lot better shape in the industry.
Yeah, totally agree. You're talking about, value and quality of service over just price.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm going to be a broken record here. I must have said this on the last 2 podcasts. They haven't been released yet, but I'm going to sound like a broken record. I haven't even got the quote with me, so I'm going to butcher it. But there was a director of procurement for a big GC. I can't remember where they were based. I've got the quote. I screenshot it on my phone and saw it as soon as I saw it. And it was basically him saying that out of the last 2 decades of him awarding work to trade subcontractors, there were 2 bids that quantified the value in their bid. and he bought from them both times. He said every other bid I've ever had, all the only value you showed me was your price. So what the hell else
Wow.
was I supposed to buy on? That was his
Yeah.
quote.
Wow. That's powerful.
Everything, every time, if you're gonna come to the table and say, why'd you keep going with a low bid, that's your responsibility, because you didn't demonstrate the value of what your number means. So you put your
Yeah.
number in. Why should they go with them? What are they getting? What are they getting for it? Because you go to a restaurant and you want, I don't know, uh, a ribeye steak, and a ribeye steak, or a New York strip steak. It's got a price next to it, and you know why it's that price. You then get the A5 Wagyu, you see a different price, and you know why it's that. You know exactly why it's that price. It's not the same. It's not the
Right.
same, and that's why, and we all understand that. But when we go into the bids, you've all got different prices, but no one is demonstrating to the person that's buying it why it's different and what value comes with that price.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's a good one to think about. I'm gonna walk over to sales after this and tell them that. I'm gonna say, you know what I was thinking? You know what I came
Yeah,
up with?
you can take credit for it. It's fine. Right, I'm going to dive into these quick fire questions. So
Yeah,
yeah, don't think about these too much, but
sure.
we'll fly straight through them. So favorite food?
Ribeye steak. You just nailed it.
There you go.
All day, every day.
Sports team.
Oh, dude, bad years, good years. I guess way more bad than good, but the Denver Broncos.
Wow. I think
Yeah, it's gonna be a good
Lewis,
year. I mean,
Lewis Hamilton, is he involved with them? He invested
yeah, he's
in the
he's
Broncos.
he's part of the ownership group now, which is I grew up with like the Pat Bowlen ownership. It seems it's so foreign to me that Walmart and whoever else, Condoleezza Rice, own part of the Broncos. It's crazy.
Yeah, love it. Sorry, favorite city and why?
Man, I would have said Parker, Colorado until I moved out to Ramona, California. So I live in Ramona now, which is like 45, maybe 50 minutes outside of San Diego, and it has
Beautiful.
been amazing. Yeah, super happy.
Gorgeous. Favorite hobby?
Oh man, I'm a hobby guy. I have so many. But I would say the longest tenured and most sort of in-depth one for me has been Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm a second degree black belt. I've trained for,
Wow.
like almost 20 years now, and so um, I'm away from it a little bit now because I'm sort of covering some injuries back. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I would say Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, it's not surprising that you're walking in with these GCs and winning all these bids. That's a second.
If it worked more, I would be using it more.
Yeah. Favorite book or movie?
Favorite book is The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. I read it every year, and I read it the first week of the year. And I mean, I've done it for probably a dozen years now, and it every single time I find something new, applicable, meaningful in the book.
Love it. What's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Man, so I thought a lot about this one. It's interesting. So the old CEO of Jared Butler, Mark Butler, a great mentor of mine. He is an interesting guy. I've never seen a guy like Mark. He could pull just a spark out of the sky and turn it into like its own living, breathing entity. Either way, I was a young guy in the trade, and I just jumped in. And I was with these iron workers and glazers, and so I wanted to be this like cool, these cool, crusty old,
Yeah,
dudes.
yeah.
And so I started tucking my jeans into my Red Wings and whatever. And he would come out to the site every now and again. At one time, he told me, he said, your life is going to change when you start acting like yourself and stop trying to act like these guys. And like literally from that moment on, he's like, you're too smart to be, pretending to be one of those old iron workers. And from that moment on, I just embraced it, and literally the opportunities came. And so I think about that one a lot. That's good advice.
I love that. If you
Yeah.
could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Oh, I would say this is maybe an obscure one, but George Marshall. George Marshall was a U.S. Secretary of State, but he was also the general of the armies in World War II. And it's interesting because I'm an ops guy. Like I love operations. I love all of it. George Marshall really was an ops guy when you think about it. And
Mm.
he knew that like all these generals in his cohort at the time, Eisenhower and Bradley and Patton, these big boisterous, louder than life guys, wanted the blood and guts kind of glory, but he knew that the sort of winning the war was based on building networks, establishing communication, linking up supplies and sort of organizing literally the largest army in the history of the world. And he did it. And so I've been fascinated with. I've read every book on George Marshall and sort of his years later, and that would be it, probably number one on my list.
I'm going to go a bit off piste here.
Yeah.
What would you ask him if you could? What question would you pose to him?
The funny thing is, like, that guy was conditioned his entire life. I mean, West Point, and grew up in a military family to go fight, right? To go literally just take up the arms and go fight. But you get to that point, and I don't think anybody would have blamed him to say it's more bullets, it's more guns, it's more. And instead, I'd ask how he knew that would win the war, right? The communication and the supply chains and those kind of things. Like, he was as far from the guns and bullets as any other person in America, but he sort of did that. Here's the interesting thing. So I just read this book called American Turnaround about the bankruptcy of General Motors, and the guy named Ed Whitaker, the CEO. He, I mean, just an incredible guy. But it was funny because General Motors got this massive bailout of TARP money in 2009 or 10 or whatever, and they gave him that infusion, right? GM did nothing different, so nothing. So the results are still poor. And it's like, with so much oversight and so much money, they're using TARP funds, taxpayer dollars, to bail this business out. Why nothing changed? And so you think about something like the war, which is like, there's just a no lose option. You have to win, right? You just can't lose. And so contrasting that with the GM thing, it's like they just continued to fail, right? He ultimately fixed it, but that's what I think I kind of want to know is, like, how do you know that, what was the roadmap that you used to not fail? I mean, the entire history of the world is on the line, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Crazy
Number one thing on your bucket list.
I want to get my pilot's license. It's been on my radar for a bit. I've done absolutely zero to do it, but I will.
Yeah.
I want to so bad. Yeah.
Very cool. If you could travel anywhere in the world right now, where would you go?
Oh man, I would have said Dubai, but I went there a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And I went in the summer, and you know what that's like. But um,
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I
that
know
was
that's
tough.
like crikey.
But yeah, I think I went to Africa probably 4 years ago now, 5 years ago. And when you're getting ready to go safari out there, they tell you that, like, you're scared, you're terrified to go do that. And they tell you that it's gonna, you know, kind of carve a place in you. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what it did. Like, we went to
Wow.
the deepest, darkest parts of Tanzania, and I have thought about it every single day, and I probably will until I get back. But I got to go back to Tanzania.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. There's a pitch for Tanzania. Crikey. Yeah, I've
I'm
never
telling you,
been.
I look at the pictures on my phone probably once a week, and just I have about 1,000 from the 3 weeks we were
Yeah,
there, and incredible.
wow. If I could give you a mulligan on any decision you've ever made, what would you choose?
So when I was getting ready to leave J.R. Butler, it was a tough decision. I'd been there my whole life, and I love those guys. Um, but I had this opportunity in front of me. I opened a gym, a jujitsu gym with some of my friends,
Yep.
and you know, it was not. This is not a multi-million dollar thing. I mean, you're doing this for passion, right? I had enough savings to
Sure.
be able to see me through it, and um, I just expected this big relief from a lot of the industry problems, and I'm going to pivot completely. And then it was funny, like day one, hour one there, immediately all the same problems, just on a much smaller scale. And the people side kind of thing, instantly, immediately it falls apart. Like, one coach quits and leaves, and opens his own school. It was like a month in, I'm like, this was a massive mistake. I should not have
Yeah,
done
yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah,
But I think I liked that. It's just funny. It highlights that, like, all problems are big problems to the people that are living them, right? So at Butler, we're changing the industry and fighting GCs and whatever life was like there. And then at the gym, you're fighting over dry erase markers and stuff like that. But these are still fights. So I would go back in time, and I still probably would move on and try and spread my wings in the industry like I did.
yeah,
But I don't think I would have dove fully into a passion project. I would have went back to
yeah,
the industry that's taken care of me.
yeah. It's so fascinating you say that. I did such a similar thing. In a different life, I was a professional golfer, and right up until it became my job, I loved it. As soon as
Yeah.
it became my job, I couldn't leave that industry fast enough. It was just brutal.
Terrible.
Yeah, their
It
passion.
changes it so completely.
Yeah, they're a hobby for a reason. Like,
Yeah.
just leave it at that. Like, just go and enjoy it for what it is. And as soon as you put, I find as soon as you put business or outcomes or pressure on something that you love, it soon drags all the love away from it. And
That's right.
all the stuff why you go and do it in the first place. So yeah,
And I did it for a few months, and I ultimately went back to industry, and it was funny because I really lost a lot of the love that I had for the hobby because of that. Like I still, I've only gone back like a handful of times since, and I ended up selling out, my portion of that, and
yeah.
well before I decided to move to California. But it just was like, what the heck? I mean, yeah, I totally polluted myself on that one. So I would mulligan that one pretty hard, but did take some good lessons from it.
Yeah, that's it. It's all a learning curve, isn't it? No, I love it. This has been so cool. You've been so generous with your time. There's no end of valuable nuggets in there. I know people are going to take no end of value from it. We must do it again. And yeah, you've been a gent. So thanks a lot, Felix.
Yeah, thanks for your time, man. I definitely appreciate you letting me join, and yeah, love chatting with you. Good stuff.
All right. Thanks, Felix.
Thanks, Tom.